At a crowded subway station, a homeless girl was singing with her old guitar when someone suddenly invited her to join a major TV singing show. She thought it was her chance to change her life, but the crew only brought her into contrast with the wealthy contestants. They even planned to cut her mic in the middle of her performance to humiliate her. But she didn't panic. She set the mic down and sang with her raw voice, making the entire audience fall silent. And then something no one expected happened. Before we go back, let us know where you're watching from, and subscribe because tomorrow I've got something extra special for you. The hallway behind the stage of Voices of America smelled like fresh paint and expensive coffee. LED lights blinked overhead. Production assistants rushed past with clipboards and headsets, their voices overlapping in urgent whispers. Amara Elise Johnson stood against the cold brick wall, gripping her guitar case. The wood was chipped at the corners, held together with silver duct tape that caught the light. She was 17, black with natural hair pulled back in a low bun that she'd tied with a rubber band that morning. Her hoodie, once navy blue, now faded to something closer to gray, hung loose on her thin frame. She'd been standing there for 20 minutes. Nobody had spoken to her. Down the hall, a man in a tailored gray vest walked toward her. His shoes clicked against the concrete floor. Philip Grayson. She'd heard his name 3 times already today from the assistants who pretended not to see her. He stopped 5 feet away, looking at his phone. "You're the subway girl," he said without looking up. "Yes, sir. Amara Johnson." Now he looked. His eyes moved from her face down to her sneakers. The left one had a hole near the big toe, then back up. Not studying her, cataloging her. "Right, the one from the video." He slipped his phone into his pocket. "You understand why you're here, don't you?" Amara's stomach twisted. She'd eaten half a bagel that morning. Found it in a trash can outside a coffee shop on 34th Street, still wrapped in paper. That was 8 hours ago. "To sing," she said. Philip smiled. Not a kind smile, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. "Sure, to sing." He tilted his head. "But let's be honest, kid. You're not here to win. You're here because our audience loves a good contrast. You know what I mean by that." She knew exactly what he meant. "You've got the look," he continued, gesturing vaguely at her. "The whole street thing. It's great for TV. Very authentic." He said that last word like it tasted funny in his mouth. The viewers eat this stuff up. They'll watch you, they'll feel something, and then they'll watch the real singers and appreciate them even more. You're the setup. Get it. Amara's fingers tightened on the guitar strap. "If I sing well," she paused, forcing herself to keep her voice steady. "Will you give me a real meal tonight?" Philip blinked. Then he laughed. A big, loud laugh that echoed off the walls. "Oh, that's perfect." He turned to his assistant, a young woman with a tablet. "Did you hear that? Write that down? We can use that." He looked back at Amara, still grinning. "You're a funny kid. I like you." "I'm not joking," Amara said. His smile faded a little. "Look, sweetheart, we're not running a charity here. You'll get your 15 minutes. After that, you go back to wherever you came from. But hey," he shrugged, "there's craft services in the main hall. Maybe somebody leaves something behind. You never know." The assistant shifted uncomfortably beside him. Amara felt something hot rise in her chest. Not anger. Not yet. Something sharper. She'd felt this before 3 years ago, standing outside a hospital while a nurse told her they couldn't do anything more without insurance. That same tightness in her throat. That same realization that to some people she was just a problem to be managed. But this time was different. This time cameras were everywhere. "Okay," she said quietly. Philip raised an eyebrow. "Okay, that's it." "Yeah." Amara adjusted the guitar on her shoulder. "I understand." He studied her for a moment longer, then shrugged. "Good. We go live in 2 hours. Don't be late." He walked past her, already forgetting she existed. The assistant lingered for half a second, her mouth opening like she wanted to say something. Then she hurried after Philip. Amara waited until they turned the corner. Then she pulled the guitar around to her front and ran her thumb over the strings. The low E was flat. She twisted the tuning peg by ear. No tuner never had one until the note hummed true. Her hands weren't shaking. 3 years on the street taught you a lot of things. How to sleep sitting up, how to tell which cops would hassle you and which ones would pretend not to see you, how to keep singing even when your fingers went numb from the cold, and how to recognize when someone thought you were nothing. She'd been nothing before. Plenty of times, but she wasn't here to beg this time. She was here to flip the whole damn board. The lounge was everything Amara had imagined rich kids' spaces would be. Leather couches the color of caramel, a flat-screen TV mounted on the wall playing highlights from previous seasons, and a buffet table, God, that buffet table loaded with sandwiches, fruit trays, cookies, bottled water soda cans, sweating condensation. Amara stood in the doorway. Nobody looked at her. 5 contestants sat scattered around the room, ranging from 15 to 18 years old. All of them looked polished, hairstyled, makeup done, outfits that coordinated without looking like they tried too hard. One girl wore a white sundress that probably cost more than Amara had earned in 6 months of Subway performances. That girl was Madison Blake. Amara recognized her from the contestant board she'd seen earlier. 18 years old, from Connecticut. Father was a corporate lawyer. Madison had that kind of beauty that looked effortless, but wasn't perfect skin blonde hair with highlights that caught the light just right posture that said she'd never doubted her place in any room. She sat on the couch beside a boy with an acoustic guitar laughing at something on her phone. A makeup artist touched up another contestant's foundation. "You're going to be stunning out there, honey." Amara took a step inside. A production assistant different from Philip's assistant, this one younger, maybe 22, glanced up from her clipboard. Her smile was automatic, professional. "Hi there, are you here to support someone?" "I'm performing," Amara said. The assistant's smile flickered. Her eyes dropped to the clipboard, scanning quickly. "Oh, you're..." She found the name. Her expression shifted just slightly. "You're Amara." "Right. She glanced at the buffet table, then back at Amara. "I'm Chelsea, so just so you know, this lounge is technically for our official contestants." "I'm a contestant." "Well, you're more of a special guest." Chelsea's voice was still friendly, but there was something underneath it now. Careful, like she was navigating around something fragile. "The food here is really just for the main lineup, but I think there might be vending machines downstairs or..." "It's fine," Amara said. She wasn't going to fight for a sandwich, not in front of everyone. Chelsea seemed relieved. "Great. Okay, so just make yourself comfortable. Anywhere is fine. Anywhere that wasn't the couch. Anywhere that wasn't near the food. Anywhere that kept her separate." Amara walked to the far wall and leaned against it, sliding down until she sat on the floor. She pulled her backpack into her lap. Everything she owned fit inside it, and unzipped the top just enough to check that the envelope was still there. It was. She zipped it back up. Across the room, Madison whispered something to the boy next to her. They both glanced at Amara, then looked away quickly. A man in an expensive suit entered the lounge. Madison's father. He carried 2 Starbucks cups and handed one to his daughter. "Thanks, Daddy." Madison took a sip, then frowned. Why is she here? Her father followed her gaze. When he saw Amara, his expression didn't change much, just a small tightening around his mouth. He leaned down and said something too quiet for Amara to hear. But Amara had gotten good at reading lips. "She's here to show contrast, sweetie, so people like you shine brighter." Madison nodded slowly, like that made perfect sense. Amara's jaw tightened. She looked down at her guitar case, running her finger along the duct tape patch near the handle. Her grandmother's voice came back to her, clear as if she were sitting right beside her. "When they try to shrink you, baby, you grow twice as big." Amara closed her eyes and took a slow breath. Not yet. Not yet. The noise of the lounge faded. Amara wasn't in that cold, bright room anymore. She was 10 years old, sitting on a piano bench that was too tall for her feet to touch the ground. The apartment in Harlem was small, 1-bedroom, a kitchen where the faucet dripped no matter how tight you turned it, and a living room barely big enough for the upright piano her grandmother refused to get rid of. "Again," Loretta Hayes said. Amara's small fingers found the keys. She played the opening of Amazing Grace, but her grandmother stopped her after 4 bars. "You're playing the notes. I need you to play the song." Loretta sat down beside her, her hands weathered strong, always warm, covering Amara's. Music isn't just sound, baby. It's a language. And like any language, it can say things words can't. Like what? Like I'm here. Like I matter. Like you can't erase me. Loretta pressed down on middle C, letting it ring. Our people used music to survive things that should have killed us. Slave songs, spirituals, gospel, blues. Every note was a weapon. Amara looked up at her grandmother. Against what? Against anyone who tries to make you small. The memory shifted. Now Amara was 12. Her grandmother stood at the stove, stirring a pot of soup that smelled like heaven. The kitchen light was warm and yellow. Grandma. Why didn't you ever get famous? You're better than people on the radio." Loretta laughed softly. "Fame isn't the same as success, baby." "But you went to Juilliard. You told me that's like the best music school in the world." "It is. So why didn't you?" "I did what mattered." Loretta turned from the stove wooden spoon still in her hand. "I taught kids in the church who couldn't afford real lessons. I wrote songs nobody recorded, but everybody sang. I raised you." She tapped the spoon gently against Amara's nose, leaving a tiny dot of broth. "That's a life, sweetheart. Maybe not a famous one, but a good one." Another shift. Amara was 14 now. The memory she hated most. The hospital room was too white, too clean, too full of machines that beeped and hissed like they were counting down something inevitable. Her grandmother lay in the bed, thinner than she'd been a month ago. The cancer had moved fast. "Come here, baby." Amara moved to the bedside. She'd been crying for days, but right now her eyes were dry. Empty. Loretta reached out and took her hand. Her grip was weak, but she squeezed. "I need you to listen to me. Can you do that?" Amara nodded. "I'm not going to tell you everything's going to be okay. I don't know if it will be." Loretta's voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. "But I need you to promise me something. Anything. Don't beg for pity. Not from anyone. Don't let them see you as something broken that needs fixing." She pulled Amara's hand to her chest right over her heart. "This is where your weapon lives. Right here. Everything I taught you, it's all in there now. And when the time comes, you use it. Not to hurt anyone, but to make them see you. Really see you. Grandma, promise me." "I promise." Loretta smiled. It was tired, but it was real. 3 days later, she was gone. The memory dissolved. Amara opened her eyes. She was back in the lounge, sitting on the floor, her backpack in her lap. Her throat felt tight. Nobody in this room knew who Loretta Hayes was. Nobody knew what she'd taught. Nobody knew that the woman who died in a hospital bed because she couldn't afford treatment had once been one of the first black women to graduate from Juilliard's composition program. Nobody knew she'd trained a boy named Daniel Carter who went on to become the CEO of the network that owned this very show. But Amara knew. And tonight, that knowledge was going to matter. The first night after her grandmother died, Amara thought someone would help her. She was 14 years old, standing on the corner of 125th Street with everything she owned crammed into a backpack that cut into her shoulders. The guitar case hung from her other hand, heavy enough to make her arm ache. It was November, cold enough that she could see her breath in white puffs. She'd spent the afternoon at her apartment, though it wasn't anymore watching the landlord change the locks. He'd been nice about it at least. Let her take her time packing. Even said he was sorry. But sorry didn't change the fact that the rent was 2 months overdue and nobody was left to pay it. "You got family?" he'd asked. She'd shaken her head. "Friends." Another shake. He'd pressed his lips together, looking uncomfortable. "There's shelters. I can give you some addresses." "I'm fine," she'd said, because what else could she say? Now standing on the street as the sun went down and the temperature dropped, she realized she had no idea what fine meant anymore. She started walking. No destination. Just movement, because standing still felt like giving up. The city looked different at night when you had nowhere to go. The lights seemed brighter, harsher. Every storefront was locked. Every doorway held someone else who'd run out of options. Men with cardboard signs. Women wrapped in trash bags for warmth. Kids not much older than her with eyes that had gone flat. She walked for hours. Her feet blistered inside her sneakers. Her shoulders screamed from the weight of the backpack. But she kept going because what else was there? Around midnight, she found a 24-hour McDonald's on 42nd Street. The fluorescent lights inside made everything look sickly yellow. She bought a small coffee with the last $3 in her pocket and sat in a corner booth, making it last as long as possible. A security guard watched her from across the room, not threatening exactly, just observing. She lasted until 3 in the morning before he walked over. "You can't sleep here," he said. Not mean. Just tired. "I'm not sleeping. You gotta buy something else or leave." She didn't have money for anything else. She left. The subway station at Times Square was her next stop. She'd ridden the subway 1,000 times with her grandmother, going to church, to the library, to free concerts in Central Park. But she'd never really seen it before. Not like this. Even at 3 in the morning, people moved through the station. Late shift workers in scrubs and fast food uniforms, drunk tourists stumbling toward their hotels. And others like her, the invisible ones, the ones who lived in the margins. She found a spot near the downtown N train platform far enough from the turnstiles that transit cops usually didn't bother with it close enough to foot traffic that she didn't feel completely alone. She sat down back against the tiled wall and pulled the guitar out of its case. Her grandmother's voice came to her clear as if she were sitting right beside her. When you don't know what else to do, baby, play. The music knows the way, even when you don't. Amara positioned the guitar on her lap fingers, finding the familiar shapes of the chords. She started with Amazing Grace, the first song her grandmother had taught her. Her voice cracked on the opening line. Her fingers felt stiff, clumsy from cold and grief. But she kept going. A man in a business suit walked past and tossed $1 into the open guitar case without breaking stride. She stopped staring at the crumpled bill. $1. It wasn't much, but it was something. She kept playing. By the time the sun came up, she had $8.73 scattered in the case. 3 people had stopped to listen. One woman had left a granola bar beside the money, wrapped in plastic, still fresh. Amara ate it slowly, making it last, and realized something this could work. It wasn't a home, it wasn't safety, but it was survival. She played the next night, and the next, and the one after that. The subway became her classroom, and New York City became her teacher, brutal, unforgiving, but honest in its cruelty. She learned that acoustics mattered. The tiled tunnels under Union Square had gorgeous reverb that made even her cheap guitar sound rich. The concrete platforms at Grand Central where terrible sound got swallowed up disappeared into the vast spaces, but Washington Square Park, when the weather was decent, had something magical. The sound bounced off the arch, carried on. The wind drew crowds. She learned that timing was everything. Rush hour meant more people, but they were stressed, rushing heads down. They didn't stop. Late evening was better between 7 and 10 when people were heading home from dinners or shows, when they were relaxed enough to pause, listen, maybe drop a few bills. She learned to read the cops. Some were human. They'd nod at her, let her play as long as she wasn't blocking traffic. Others, the ones with something to prove, would hassle her, tell her to move along, threaten to confiscate her guitar if they caught her again. She learned to disappear when those cops showed up. She learned that people saw her in 3 ways: invisible, most common, pitiable, uncomfortable for everyone, or entertainment tolerable as long as she was good. She preferred invisible. Being invisible meant being left alone. The first winter was the hardest. New York winters didn't care if you were 14 and alone. The cold cut through her hoodie like it wasn't there. Her fingers went numb after 20 minutes of playing. She'd blow on them, tuck them under her arms, wait until feeling came back, then play again. She learned which subway stations were warmest, which had heating vents she could sleep near, which had security guards who'd pretend not to notice her curled up in a corner at 4 in the morning. She learned to sleep in increments, an hour here, 2 hours there, never long enough to fall into deep sleep, because deep sleep made you vulnerable. She learned to wake at footsteps, at voices, at any sound that felt wrong. She learned which shelters would take someone her age without calling social services and which ones would put her in the system. She avoided the latter. The system meant foster homes, and foster homes meant losing her grandmother's guitar. She'd heard stories. She learned that her voice could cut through the roar of an incoming train if she hit the notes just right. That her breath control could improve if she practiced in the cold, forcing herself to sing long phrases without gasping. That her cheap guitar could sound almost professional if she played in the right spaces with the right technique. By 15, she'd developed calluses thick enough that the strings didn't hurt anymore. Her voice had deepened, strengthened, gained a rasp that people seemed to like. She could play for 3 hours straight without her fingers cramping. She started writing her own songs. Not happy songs, not hopeful songs. Songs about empty subway cars at 3 in the morning. About the particular kind of loneliness that comes from being surrounded by 8 million people who don't see you. About cold that seeps into your bones and stays there. About grief that doesn't fade, just changes shape. She wrote about her grandmother, about the hospital, about the nurse who'd said so professionally, "I'm sorry, but without full coverage, there's nothing more we can do." She wrote about anger, about unfairness, about systems that were designed to grind people down and then blame them for being ground down. People loved those songs. They'd stop, listen, actually listen, then leave more money than usual. Sometimes they'd cry. Sometimes they'd ask where they could hear more. "I don't record," she'd tell them, "just hear." By 16, she was making enough most days to eat at least one real meal and save a little. Not enough for an apartment, not even close, but enough to survive. She learned the rhythms of the city. Where to shower, the YMCA on 14th Street let you use their facilities for $5 if you bought a day pass. Where to do laundry, laundromats would let you sit for hours if you actually washed something. Where to charge her phone, public libraries, coffee shops, if she bought something small, outlets, in subway stations, if she was careful. She learned that some people were kind in small, crucial ways. The woman who ran a bodega on Lexington Avenue would let Amara use the bathroom without buying anything. A librarian at the main branch on Fifth Avenue would slip her granola bars and pretend not to notice. An old man who played saxophone at Penn Station taught her how to make her voice carry without straining it. But she also learned that cruelty was casual, constant, and often came from the people who had the most. She learned this from the teenagers who'd film her on their phones, laughing, making TikToks with captions like, "NYC is wild," and "This girl really living her best life. Lmao." She learned this from the business executives who'd drop pennies in her case, literally pennies, like it was a joke. She learned this from the transit cop who confiscated her guitar one night because she didn't have a busking permit, then made her wait 4 hours in a cold office to get it back just because he could. She learned this from the couples who'd argue in front of her about whether to give her money loud enough for her to hear, using words like enabling, and she probably has a drug problem, and if she really wanted help, there are programs. Every humiliation was a lesson. Every dismissal was practice for the next one. By 17, she'd developed armor. Not thick enough to stop the pain completely, but thick enough to function through it. She'd also developed something else, a reputation. Regular commuters started recognizing her. They'd request songs, drop 20s instead of singles. One woman, a music teacher from Brooklyn, stopped every week to tell her, "You're too good for this. You should be on a stage." Amara would smile and thank her, but she didn't believe it. Stages were for people with resources, with connections, with backup plans. Stages were for people who could afford to fail. She was just trying not to freeze. Then one Tuesday in October, 3 people in matching polo shirts, production assistants for some show she'd learn later, walked through Union Square Station. They had clipboards and cameras and that particular energy of people who were always in a hurry. They stopped when they heard her singing. One of them filmed her, just pulled out a phone and recorded a full song. When she finished, the woman with the clipboard approached. Big smile, white teeth, expensive sneakers. "Hi. Oh my God, you're incredible. Can I ask, are you interested in being on TV?" Amara's first instinct was to say no. TV meant exposure, and exposure meant people asking questions she didn't want to answer. But the woman kept talking. "We're casting for a show called Voices of America. It's huge, millions of viewers. We're looking for unique talent, authentic stories. You'd be perfect." Amara looked at the woman's manicured nails, her designer bag, her easy confidence. She thought about her grandmother, about 3 years of subway platforms, about Philip Grayson and people like him who thought they owned the world. And she thought about the letter, the one she'd been carrying for 3 years, sealed, waiting. "Yeah," she said, "I'm interested." The woman's smile got even bigger. "Amazing. Let me get your contact info." Amara gave her the number of a free phone she'd gotten from a community organization. The woman typed it in, promised someone would call, then left with her crew. That night, Amara opened her backpack and pulled out the envelope. Her grandmother's handwriting stared back at her. "To Amara, when you're ready." She'd waited 3 years. 3 years of cold nights and hunger and being invisible. Maybe she was ready now. Or maybe it didn't matter if she was ready. Maybe the world was going to test her anyway, and this was her chance to choose the battlefield. She tucked the letter back into her bag, laid down on the bench she'd been sleeping on for the past month, and closed her eyes. Tomorrow, she decided she'd find out what kind of weapon music could really be. Amara sat on the cold floor of the contestant lounge, back against the wall, as far from the buffet table as she could get, without leaving the room entirely. Her backpack rested between her knees. She could feel the letter inside had been feeling it for the past hour, like it was burning through the fabric. Around her, the other contestants laughed and talked and ate. Madison Blake sat on the leather couch, scrolling through her phone, occasionally showing something to her father and giggling. The boy with the acoustic guitar was practicing scales quietly in the corner. A makeup artist touched up a girl's lipstick, both of them chatting about some restaurant in Manhattan that Amara had never heard of. Nobody looked at her. She might as well have been furniture. She unzipped the backpack slowly, carefully keeping it low. Her fingers found the envelope by touch. She'd held it so many times over the past 3 years that she knew every crease, every soft spot where the paper had worn thin. She pulled it out. The envelope was yellowed now, not white anymore. The seal had loosened from being carried around in heat and cold and everything in between. Her grandmother's handwriting on the front, "To Amara, when you're ready," had faded but was still legible. Was she ready? She had no idea. But sitting here watching rich kids eat food she wasn't allowed to touch, wearing clothes that cost more than she'd made in 6 months, felt like exactly the kind of corner her grandmother had warned her about. When life corners you, baby, you don't beg. You fight smart. Amara broke the seal. The letter was written on both sides of 2 pages, dense with her grandmother's careful script. Amara had to blink a few times to focus. Her eyes were dry, tired from not sleeping well last night on a subway bench. She started reading. "My dearest Amara, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I'm so sorry. Not for dying, we all do that eventually, and I've had a good run, but for leaving you alone. I know how hard that will be. I know you'll be scared, but I need you to know something. You're not as alone as you think you are. I never told you much about my time at Juilliard. There were reasons for that. Partly because it was complicated. Being one of maybe 5 black women in that entire program wasn't easy, and I didn't want you to think that suffering was a requirement for success. But also because I didn't want you thinking that pedigree matters more than practice. But there's something you need to know now, something I should have told you years ago. When I was at Juilliard, I was assigned to mentor a first-year student. The school had a program where upperclassmen helped new students adjust. Most of the mentors didn't take it seriously. They'd meet their mentees once, maybe twice, then forget about them. I didn't do that. My mentee was a boy named Daniel Carter, 19 years old, from Atlanta. Black kid, poor as dirt, brilliant mind. He was studying music business, which was rare. Most of us were performers or composers. But he saw the industry, clearly saw how it worked, saw where the power really lived. He also couldn't afford books, couldn't afford decent meals, couldn't afford warm clothes for a New York winter. His dorm situation fell through 2nd semester, and he was sleeping in the practice rooms, hoping nobody would notice. I noticed. I let him stay in my apartment, just a fold-out couch, nothing fancy. I shared my food, introduced him to people who could help, fought for him when professors tried to dismiss him. Not because I wanted anything from him, just because that's what you do when you see someone drowning and you know how to swim. He never forgot that. We lost touch after he graduated. Life does that sometimes. But I kept track of him from a distance, watched him work his way up through the industry, watched him become an executive, then a VP, then more. Last I heard, about 3 years ago, Daniel Carter was named CEO of a major television network, one of the youngest, one of the only black executives at that level. He's running a company that produces national shows now, big ones. Amara's heart started pounding. She glanced up at the TV mounted on the lounge wall where highlights from previous seasons of Voices of America played on loop. In the corner of the screen, barely visible, a production of Carter Media Group. She looked back down at the letter pulse racing. If life ever corners you and baby, I'm afraid it will find him. Find Daniel Carter. But listen to me carefully. Don't ask him for charity. Don't beg. Don't show up talking about how hard things are or how much you need help. Show him what you can do. Show him who you are. Show him the work we did together, the music we made, the strength we built. Then let him choose what kind of man he wants to be. He'll remember me. I know he will. And more importantly, he'll remember what it felt like to be the kid everyone counted out. The one who shouldn't have made it, but did. Daniel Carter hates injustice more than he loves comfort. I know that about him. It's in his bones, just like music is in yours. Use that. I'm sorry I can't be there to help you, sweetheart. I'm sorry I couldn't fight the cancer longer. I'm sorry I'm leaving you with just a letter and a name and a hope. But I taught you everything I know. And everything I know came from people who survived things that should have killed them. You come from a long line of survivors, Amara. Don't forget that. All my love, Grandma Loretta P.S. His office is at 1515 Broadway, 47th floor. Don't call ahead, just show up. He'll see you. At the bottom of the page, in smaller handwriting, was a phone number. Amara read the letter 3 times, then a 4th. Her grandmother's words blurred as tears filled her eyes, but she blinked them back. Not here, not now. Daniel Carter, CEO of the network, the man who greenlit Voices of America, the man who her grandmother had saved years ago when he was drowning. She folded the letter carefully and was about to put it back in her bag when she heard footsteps approaching. She looked up. A man stood about 3 feet away, late 50s, maybe early 60s, salt and pepper hair cut neat and professional, gold-rimmed glasses, dark vest over a crisp white shirt, no tie, expensive watch but not flashy. Everything about him said authority, but quiet authority, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. He was looking directly at her, not through her, not past her, at her. "Excuse me," he said. His voice was low, careful. "What's your full name?" Amara's throat went dry. She glanced at the letter in her hands. Had he seen it? Did he know Amara Johnson? She said. "Your full name," he repeated. There was something intent in his expression, now something sharp and focused. She hesitated. Why did he want to know? Who was he? But then she looked at his face more closely, at the way he stood, at the way everyone in the room had suddenly gone quiet watching. And she knew. "Amara Loretta Johnson," she said, pronouncing the middle name clearly. The man went completely still. His hand, which had been resting casually in his pocket, came out slowly. He took off his gold-rimmed glasses, cleaned them on his shirt, a nervous gesture buying time, and put them back on. "Loretta," he said, and his voice cracked on the word. Amara's heart hammered. "Do you know that name?" He didn't answer immediately. His eyes had moved to the letter in her hands, taking in the yellowed paper, the familiar handwriting. "Was your grandmother Loretta Hayes?" he asked quietly. The room tilted. Sounds became distant. Amara felt like she was underwater. Yes, Daniel Carter, because that's who this was. She knew it now, took a half step backward. He looked like someone had physically struck him. His jaw worked, mouth opening and closing before he managed to speak again. "Where is she?" Amara's throat closed. She'd answered this question 1,000 times in her head, but saying it out loud never got easier. "She died," she said, 3 years ago. "Cancer!" Her voice broke. She forced herself to continue. "She didn't have insurance, couldn't afford treatment. By the time She stopped, couldn't finish. Daniel closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were wet. "I didn't know," he said, and there was so much pain in those 3 words. "Jesus Christ, I didn't know. I should have checked on her. She didn't want people to know," Amara said quietly. "She said she didn't need pity." "It wouldn't have been pity." His voice was fierce, now angry. "She saved my life. Do you understand that when I was 19 years old and ready to drop out because I couldn't afford to eat, she fed me? When I got evicted, she let me sleep on her couch. When professors tried to fail me for bullshit reasons, she fought them. He stopped, composed himself. "I owe everything I have to her. Everything." Behind him, Chelsea, the production assistant, appeared in the doorway, looking nervous. "Mr. Carter, we didn't know you were coming down to the contestant lounge. Do you need everyone out?" Daniel said, not looking at her. Chelsea blinked. "Sir, everyone, out, now." His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the room like a knife. Chelsea's eyes went wide. She glanced at the contestants Madison and her father, the boy with the guitar, the girl getting her makeup done, then back at Daniel. "But the contestants need to—" "I don't care," Daniel said, still not looking at her. "Clear the room, now." Chelsea nodded quickly and started herding people toward the door. Madison shot a confused, slightly scared look back at Amara as her father guided her out. The others followed, whispering to each other. Within 30 seconds, the lounge was empty except for Amara and Daniel. Daniel grabbed a chair, pulled it over, and sat down heavily. He took off his glasses again, rubbed his eyes, put them back on. "Tell me everything," he said. Amara told him. She told him about the hospital, about sitting in that 2-white hallway at 14 years old, listening to nurses talk in low voices about insurance coverage and treatment options that weren't really options at all, about watching her grandmother die because the system decided her life wasn't worth saving. She told him about losing the apartment, about the landlord changing the locks while she stood in the hallway with a backpack and a guitar, about that first night on the street, cold and scared and completely alone. She told him about 3 years of subway platforms, about learning to sleep sitting up, about the cops who hassled her and the strangers who were kind, about writing songs on cardboard because she couldn't afford paper. She told him about the production assistants who found her at Union Square, about how they'd filmed her without asking, how they'd talked about her authentic story and unique angle, like she was a product they were trying to sell. She told him about Philip Grayson, about his laugh when she asked for a meal, about overhearing him tell an assistant she was perfect poor black and desperate ratings will love this. She told him about being called contrast girl in the production notes, about Chelsea pulling the food away from her, about Madison's father explaining loud enough for her to hear that she was here to make his daughter shine brighter. Daniel listened to all of it without interrupting. His jaw got tighter with every sentence, his hands curled into fists on his knees. When she mentioned Philip's laugh, he muttered something under his breath that sounded like a curse. When she finally finished, there was a long silence. "You shouldn't be here," Daniel said eventually. His voice was rough. Amara's stomach dropped. "What?" "Not like this. Not as some fucking punchline for Philip's twisted game." He stood up, started pacing. "I'm pulling you from the segment. Right now. I'll make sure you get a meal, a place to stay, whatever you need, but I will not let them humiliate you on national television." "No." Daniel stopped mid-pace. "What? Don't pull me." He stared at her. "Amara, let them do exactly what they plan to do. Are you out of your mind?" He wasn't yelling, but his voice was intense. "Do you understand what they're going to try to do to you? Philip doesn't want you to succeed. He wants you to fail, spectacularly, in front of millions of people. He wants you to be a joke so the other contestants look better by comparison. That's the entire point of bringing you here." "I know," Amara said calmly. "Then why?" "Because if you interfere, they'll just say you were being nice. They'll say I got special treatment because I had a connection, and then nothing changes. The system stays exactly the same. They'll just find another kid like me next season and do this all over again." Daniel opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. He sat back down slowly. "But if you let them show the world exactly who they are," Amara continued, "if you record everything, every word, every setup, every manipulation, then people will see the truth, and they won't be able to deny it, or spin it, or explain it away." "That's too big a risk," Daniel said. "What if you freeze up there? What if the pressure breaks you? What if—" "It won't. You don't know that." "Yes, I do." Amara met his eyes. "My grandmother didn't teach me music so I could hide from people like Philip. She taught me music so I could fight back. And 3 years on the street taught me how to take a hit and keep standing." Daniel studied her face for a long moment. She could see him weighing options, calculating risks, trying to find another way. "You really want to do this?" he asked finally. "Yes. You understand what you're asking. If I go along with this plan, I can't step in. I can't save you if it goes wrong. I have to let it play out." "I'm not asking you to save me," Amara said. "I'm asking you to watch. Record everything. Backstage, front stage production meetings, all of it. Make sure cameras catch every single thing they do and say. Document it so nobody can claim later that it didn't happen." She paused, then added, "And when I'm done, when they've shown the whole country exactly who they are, then you decide what kind of man you want to be." The corner of Daniel's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but something close. "She really did teach you well, didn't she? She taught me how to win without begging for permission." Daniel was quiet for another long moment. Then he nodded. "Okay," he said. "We do it your way." He pulled out his phone. "But I'm putting cameras everywhere. And I mean everywhere. Hallways, green rooms, production booth, Philip's office, every corner of this building. Nothing gets erased. Nothing gets edited out. Everything that happens tonight goes on record." "Good," Amara said. He made a call. Someone answered immediately, probably an assistant. "I need a favor," Daniel said into the phone. "Actually, no. Not a favor. An order. I need full surveillance coverage for tonight's broadcast. Every camera we have, backstage, production areas, all of it. Yes, I know that's unusual. I don't care. And I need it on a separate server, one that only I have access to. Nobody else touches it. Not Philip, not the directors, nobody." He paused, listening. "Because I said so. That's why. Get it done." He hung up and looked at Amara. "Done. By the time your segment starts, we'll have eyes on everything." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I need to know, are you sure you can pull this off? I've seen what Philip does to people. He's cruel, Amara. He'll try to break you in front of everyone." "I know. And you're really not scared." She thought about that. Thought about 3 years of sleeping on subway benches, of cops kicking her awake, of strangers filming her for TikTok jokes, of being invisible, pitiable, or entertainment, but never human. "I'm terrified," she said honestly, "but I'm more angry than scared, and anger is useful." Daniel's expression softened. You sound exactly like her, you know. Your grandmother. She used to say something similar. Turn the pain into power, the fear into fuel. She said that to me too. Of course she did. He stood up. All right, your segment is in 90 minutes. Use that time however you need. And Amara, whatever happens out there, you're not alone anymore. Not after tonight. Win or lose, succeed or fail, you're not going back to the streets. That's a promise. Amara's throat tightened. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Daniel walked to the door, then paused and looked back. One more thing. After this is over, however it ends, I want you to come work with me. Not as a charity case. As a partner. Help me fix this broken system. Help me make sure no other kid gets used the way they tried to use you. I don't know anything about running a TV network, Amara said. You know what matters. That's more than most executives can say. He smiled a real smile, this time warm and genuine. Think about it. Then he was gone. Amara sat alone in the empty lounge for a long time, thinking about her grandmother, about Daniel, about the plan they just made. She thought about the fact that 90 minutes from now, she'd be standing on a stage in front of millions of people, and Philip Grayson would do everything in his power to make her fail. She should have been terrified. Instead, she felt something else, something sharp and bright and almost electric. She felt ready. She picked up her guitar, ran her thumb over the duct tape patch near the sound hole, and started tuning the strings by ear. Time to show them what a weapon looked like. The stage lights hit Amara like a physical force, white-hot, blinding, so bright she couldn't see past the first few rows of the audience, but she could hear them. The whisper of programs rustling, the shuffle of feet, a few scattered laughs that cut off quickly, nervously. She stood in the wings, waiting for her cue, watching the contestant before her finish. A girl named Stephanie, 18, wearing a dress covered in sequins that caught the light like fish scales. She'd just belted out a Whitney Houston song, hitting every note with technical precision. The audience applauded enthusiastically. Stephanie walked off stage, glowing, accepting congratulations from the other contestants waiting backstage. She walked right past Amara without a glance. Philip Grayson appeared at Amara's elbow, clipboard in hand, that same smirk on his face. You're up next, Subway Girl, he said quietly, just loud enough for her to hear. Try not to embarrass yourself too badly. Yeah, remember you're here to make the real talent look good. Amara said nothing, just adjusted the guitar strap on her shoulder. A production assistant, not Chelsea, someone else, clipped a small microphone to the collar of her hoodie. This is a lavalier mic, she said, her voice professionally cheerful. It'll pick up your voice so you don't need to project too much. Just sing naturally. Amara almost laughed. The microphone wouldn't matter. She knew exactly what was about to happen. Daniel had warned her that he couldn't stop them without blowing the whole plan. This part she had to handle alone. The host's voice boomed over the speakers, artificially enthusiastic. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special performance tonight. Please welcome to the stage Amara Johnson. The applause was polite, thin, scattered, not hostile, just indifferent. Amara walked onto the stage. The audience sat in tiered rows, maybe 500 people total, their faces reduced to shadows by the brutal stage lighting. But she could feel their eyes on her, cataloging her faded jeans, her old sneakers with the hole near the toe, the guitar held together with silver duct tape. She could see the judges' panel off to the left. 3 people, 2 men and a woman, all with expensive haircuts and practiced expressions of interest. She reached center stage, positioned herself in front of the microphone stand, took a breath. The host, a man in his 40s with television-perfect hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes, walked over to her. Amara, thanks so much for being here tonight. This is exciting, isn't it? Yes, sir, she said into the microphone. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what brings you here tonight? This was the moment. She could play it safe, give them what they expected, a sob story they could pity and forget. Or she could do what her grandmother taught her. She looked past the host, past the judges, out into the darkness where millions of people were watching. My name is Amara Loretta Johnson, she said clearly. I'm 17 years old. For the last 3 years, I've been living on the streets of New York City, performing in subway stations. A murmur ran through the audience. Uncomfortable, she saw a few people shift in their seats. I want to dedicate this song to my grandmother Loretta Hayes. She was one of the first black women to graduate from Juilliard's composition program. She taught me that music doesn't have a color, doesn't have a social class, doesn't have an address. It just is. It belongs to everyone who needs it." The host's smile had frozen on his face. He clearly hadn't expected that. That's very," he struggled for a word. "Inspiring. Well, let's hear what you got for us tonight." He stepped back, giving her the stage. Amara pulled the guitar around to her front, positioned her fingers on the frets, closed her eyes for just a second, and thought of her grandmother. "When they try to silence you, baby, you sing 3 times louder." She started playing. The song was Amazing Grace, but not the version anyone expected. She'd rearranged it, stripped it down to its bones, then built it back up with gospel runs and blues bends and jazz chords her grandmother had taught her. The guitar, cheap, battered, held together with hope and duct tape, rang out clear and true. Her voice came in on the first verse, low, steady, rich with the rasps she'd developed from 3 years of singing in the cold. Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. A few people in the audience stopped shuffling, stopped whispering. She moved into the second verse, letting her voice build, adding layers, showing them what 3 years of busking had taught her about breath control and projection, and how to make people stop and listen, even when they didn't want to. That saved a wretch like me. Her guitar playing was getting stronger now, more confident. She knew every quirk of this cheap instrument, knew exactly where to press harder, where to ease off, how to coax warmth from worn strings and scarred wood. She was halfway through the chorus voice, climbing toward the high notes when it happened. A shriek of feedback cut through the air, high-pitched, piercing, painful. People in the front rows flinched. Some covered their ears. Then static. Loud, crackling static. Then nothing. The lavalier microphone clipped to her collar went completely dead. Amara kept playing, but her voice disappeared. Her mouth moved, but no sound came through the speakers. To the audience, it looked like she was miming. She saw the host glance toward the production booth, eyebrows raised in exaggerated surprise. Saw Philip standing in the wings, arms crossed, that fucking smirk on his face. Someone in the audience laughed, then another person, then a few more. Madison Blake, watching from backstage with the other contestants, giggled into her hand. "Technical difficulties, folks," the host called out, walking back onto the stage, his voice full of false sympathy. "I'm so sorry about this. We're experiencing some sound issues. Let's see if we can get this fixed." Amara stopped playing. Everyone went quiet, expecting her to leave the stage, to slink off in embarrassment while they fixed the equipment. Instead, she reached up and unclipped the lavalier microphone from her collar, walked over to the microphone stand in 3 deliberate steps, removed the mic from its holder, and set both microphones down on the stage floor, carefully, deliberately, so everyone could see what she was doing. The host blinked. Amara, I really think we should." She stepped forward into the center of the light and started playing again. No microphone, no amplification, just her voice and her guitar. She opened her mouth and sang. Her voice cut through the space like a knife through silk. Loud, clear, every word perfectly articulated, every note landing exactly where it needed to land. 3 years of singing over subway trains, over the screech of metal on metal, over announcements and conversations, and the chaos of New York had taught her how to make her voice carry, how to use her diaphragm, how to project from her chest, not her throat, how to fill a space with sound without a microphone. The laughter stopped. The audience went completely still. She sang the second verse again, her voice climbing, filling every corner of the room. The cheap guitar rang out beneath her voice, amplified by nothing but the acoustics of the space and the force of her playing. "I once was lost, but now am found." She could see people in the front rows leaning forward, could see phones coming out, people recording. She hit the bridge, her voice soaring on the high notes, sustaining them longer than should have been possible, letting them echo off the back wall of the theater. "Was blind, but now I see." A woman in the third row was crying. A man beside her had his hand over his heart. The judges who'd been looking bored or amused were sitting up straight now, actually listening. She moved into the final verse, pouring everything into it, every cold night, every dismissal, every moment someone had looked through her like she wasn't there. She channeled all of it into sound, into music, into this moment, through many dangers, toils, and snares. Her voice filled the theater, not amplified, not enhanced, just raw and human and undeniable. "I have already come." She held the final note, letting it ring out clear and pure, then brought the guitar down on one last resonant chord. Silence. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved, nobody breathed. Then from the very back of the theater, someone started clapping. Slow at first, deliberate, then faster, then someone else joined in, then another, then a whole section. Within 5 seconds, the entire audience was on their feet. The applause crashed over her like a wave, massive and overwhelming. People were cheering, shouting. A few were crying openly. The woman in the third row was sobbing, hands clasped together like she was praying. One of the judges, the woman stood up still, clapping, tears streaming down her face. The host stood, frozen microphone hanging limply in his hand, completely at a loss for words. Amara stood in the center of the stage, breathing hard sweat cooling on her skin despite the heat of the lights. She looked toward the wings. Philip Grayson was gone, disappeared, probably running, but she could see Daniel Carter standing in the shadows backstage. He wasn't clapping his hands or gripping the edge of a curtain so hard his knuckles had gone white. He was smiling, though, a fierce, proud smile, and he mouthed 2 words, "Thank you." Amara nodded once. Then she walked off stage, guitar in hand, while the audience continued to roar. The applause was still thundering, hadn't stopped, wouldn't stop when Daniel Carter walked onto the stage. The host turned, confusion breaking through his practiced expression. "Mr. Carter, I don't think you're scheduled to." Daniel took the microphone from his hand. Not gently, just took it. "I need a moment," Daniel said into the mic. His voice was calm, steady, but there was something underneath it that made the host step back immediately. The audience quieted, sensing something was happening, something unscripted. Daniel stood center stage in the same spot where Amara had been standing moments before. The lights were just as bright, just as brutal. He could feel the heat of them. "My name is Daniel Carter," he said, his voice filling the space. "I'm the CEO of this network, and I need to tell you all something. Something that should never have happened, and something I'm going to make damn sure never happens again." The audience went completely silent now, alert, attentive. "The young woman you just heard, Amara Johnson, she was brought onto this show tonight under false pretenses." He paused, letting that sink in. "She wasn't invited here because we believed in her talent. She wasn't brought here to be celebrated or given a chance. She was brought here to fail, to be humiliated, to be turned into a joke so that our other contestants would look better by comparison." A murmur rippled through the crowd, uncomfortable, angry. "The microphone failure you just witnessed," Daniel continued, "that wasn't a technical glitch. That wasn't an accident. That was sabotage. Planned in advance by members of my own production team. They wanted her to fail on stage in front of millions of people so they could have their moment of manufactured drama." The murmur grew louder. People were looking at each other, at the judges at the production booth high above the stage. "I know this because I had cameras running backstage all night, recording everything." Daniel's voice got harder. "And I want everyone in this theater, everyone watching at home to see exactly what happened." He gestured toward the back of the stage. A massive screen lowered from the ceiling, the kind usually used for dramatic backdrop visuals. The house lights dimmed slightly. Footage began playing, crystal clear, time-stamped. The first clip showed Philip Grayson in a production meeting, leaning back in a chair, feet on the table. "The subway girl is perfect. Poor black desperate America eats this shit up. We let her on stage, she crashes and burns, everyone feels bad for 5 seconds. Then they feel better about voting for the actual talent." A production assistant on screen asked, "What if she's actually good?" Philip laughed. "Then we make sure she's not. Cut the mic during the chorus. Make it look like equipment failure. Audience will think she can't handle the pressure." The footage cut to the next clip. Chelsea, the production assistant, pulling the food tray away from Amara in the contestant lounge. "Sorry, honey, this is for official contestants only." Someone in the theater audience booed. Others joined in. The next clip showed Madison Blake and her father. Madison pointing at Amara in the background, asking, "Why is she here?" Her father leaning down, whispering loud enough for the camera to catch, "She's here to show contrast, sweetie, so people like you shine brighter." Madison on screen nodding like that made perfect sense. The booing got louder. Someone shouted, "That's messed up." The footage continued. Philip in the hallway with Amara right before her performance. "You're not here to win, you're here to make people laugh. Don't embarrass yourself too badly." Then the audio tech booth. A sound engineer saying to another, "Grayson wants the feed cut at 2:47, right when she hits the chorus." The response, "That's cruel, man. That's television." The audience wasn't just booing now. People were shouting, cursing, calling for Philip's head. The final clip showed Amara alone in a hallway, sitting on the floor, reading a letter. Her face was wet with tears, but she was silent, holding it in. The timestamp showed this was taken 2 hours before her performance. The screen went dark. Daniel's voice cut through the noise. Her grandmother was Loretta Hayes. He let the name hang in the air. Some of you might not know that name, but you should. Loretta Hayes was one of the first black women to graduate from Juilliard, one of the finest music schools in the world. She was a composer, a teacher, an incredible human being. His voice went rough with emotion. She was also my mentor. When I was 19 years old, broke sleeping in practice rooms because I couldn't afford a dorm, Loretta Hayes saved my life. She fed me, gave me a place to stay, fought for me when people tried to push me out. Everything I am, everything I've built, I owe to her. The theater was completely silent now, listening. She died 3 years ago. Cancer. She couldn't afford treatment. She couldn't afford insurance. She died because our healthcare system decided her life wasn't worth saving. He paused, composing himself. Her granddaughter, that 17-year-old girl who just sang without a microphone, has been living on the streets since she was 14. Alone, surviving. And when she came here tonight and asked if we'd give her a real meal in exchange for singing, we laughed at her. His voice broke on the last word. We laughed at a homeless child asking for food. Several people in the audience were crying now. Others looked furious. Daniel took a breath and continued. Philip Grayson, the producer responsible for planning this humiliation, has been terminated, effective immediately. He will never work for this network again, and I'm personally going to make sure no other network in this industry touches him either. The applause that erupted was different from before. Not polite, not performative, raw and fierce. But that's not enough. Daniel raised his voice over the noise. It's not enough to fire one man and pretend that fixes the system. We need to change how we think about entertainment, about people, about who deserves dignity and who doesn't. He turned to look directly at one of the cameras. Starting tonight, I'm announcing the creation of the Loretta Hayes Music Initiative, a full scholarship program for young musicians from underserved communities. Not just music lessons, full support, housing, food, education, counseling, everything they need to actually have a chance. And Amara Johnson will be our first recipient. More applause. Louder now. We're partnering with organizations across the country to find talented kids who've been overlooked, who've been dismissed, who've been told they don't matter. And we're going to prove that talent has nothing to do with money or zip codes or the color of your skin. He looked back at the audience. On behalf of this company and for the debt I owe to Loretta Hayes, I apologize. We failed tonight. We failed Amara. We failed all of you, but we're going to do better. The judges stood up, applauding. The audience followed. The noise was deafening. Backstage, Amara stood in the wings, watching Daniel on the monitor, trying to process what was happening, trying to believe it was real. Daniel handed the microphone back to the stunned host and walked off stage, came straight to Amara. "You did it," he said quietly. "We did it," she corrected. He smiled a real smile, tired but genuine. "Your grandmother would be so damn proud." "Yeah," Amara said, and her voice broke. "She would." Across the theater, Philip Grayson tried to slip out a side exit. Security stopped him. Cameras caught the whole thing. His red face, his fumbling excuses, his desperate attempt to maintain some dignity as he was escorted from the building. The footage would be online within minutes. His career was over. And in living rooms across America, people recorded the broadcast on their phones, posted clips to social media, started hashtags, demanded accountability. Within an hour, the clips would have 10 million views. Within a day, 50 million. Within a week, Voices of America would be the most talked about show in the country, not for its entertainment value, but for becoming a catalyst for conversation about how reality television exploits vulnerable people. And Amara Johnson would become a symbol, not of pity, not of victimhood, of resistance. 3 weeks after the broadcast, Amara sat in a conference room on the 43rd floor of Carter Media Group headquarters. The room was all glass and steel, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. She'd lived in this city her entire life, but she'd never seen it from this high up, never realized how small everything looked from this vantage point. Daniel sat across from her at a long table. Beside him were 3 other executives, 2 women, and a man, all in business casual, all with tablets and laptops open in front of them. At the head of the table sat a woman in her 50s who'd introduced herself as Dr. Patricia Morrison, the newly appointed director of the Loretta Hayes Music Initiative. "We've been flooded with applications," Dr. Morrison said, scrolling through something on her tablet. Over 8,000 in 3 weeks. Kids from Detroit, Atlanta, Los Angeles, Chicago, rural Georgia, the Bronx, everywhere. All of them talented, all of them struggling. Many of them in situations similar to yours. Amara felt her chest tighten. 8,000 kids, 8,000. How many can we fund? Daniel asked, making notes on his own tablet. With current resources, we can offer full scholarships to about 200 students this year, Dr. Morrison replied. Full means housing, education, instruments, tutoring, mental health support, everything. But if donations continue at this rate, she pulled up a chart showing projected funding. We could potentially triple that number next year. Maybe more. One of the other executives, a woman named Janet, spoke up. The corporate sponsors are lining up. We've got interest from instrument manufacturers, streaming platforms, even some major labels wanting to partner. Everyone wants to be associated with this initiative. Make sure the partnerships don't come with strings, Daniel said immediately. No company gets to use these kids for marketing without their explicit consent. No photo ops they don't want to do. No manufactured storylines. We're not repeating the mistakes of Voices of America. Janet nodded, making a note. Understood. What about the housing component? Daniel asked. That's the piece I'm most concerned about. Music lessons don't mean anything if a kid's sleeping in a car. Dr. Morrison pulled up another document. We're partnering with youth housing organizations in 15 cities so far. We've secured apartments, homestays with vetted families, and in some cases, group homes specifically for artists. We're working with social workers in each location to ensure every student has stable housing, 3 meals a day, and access to healthcare. Healthcare is covered, Amara heard herself ask. It was the first time she'd spoken in the meeting. Everyone turned to look at her. Yes, Dr. Morrison said gently. Full coverage. Medical, dental, vision, mental health. No exceptions. Amara's throat went tight. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Daniel glanced at her, understanding in his eyes, then looked back at the group. What about the ones we can't fund, the applications we have to turn down? We're creating a secondary program, Janet said. For applicants who don't receive full scholarships, we're offering stipends, free online lessons from professional musicians, and connections to local music programs. It's not the same as full support, but it's something. And we're building a database, Dr. Morrison added. Every applicant gets added with their consent. As funding grows, we'll go back through and offer additional spots. Nobody gets forgotten. Daniel looked at Amara. What do you think? You've been quiet. She took a breath. Make sure they don't have to perform their trauma to get help. No essays about their worst experiences. No auditions where they have to prove how deserving they are. If a kid says they need support, believe them. Dr. Morrison made a note. That's already in our guidelines, but I'll make sure it's emphasized in all communications. The meeting continued for another hour. They discussed curriculum options, partnership details, legal protections for underage participants. Amara mostly listened, trying to absorb the fact that all of this entire program, existed because of one night, one performance, one decision to not back down. When the meeting finally ended, Daniel walked Amara to the elevator. You okay? He asked. Overwhelmed. Yeah, I figured. He pressed the button for the lobby. I have something to show you before you leave, if you have time. I have time. They rode down to the first floor. The lobby was enormous marble floors, high ceilings, security desk near the entrance. But Daniel led her to a wall near the elevator bank where a large bronze plaque had been mounted. It read, "The Loretta Hayes Music Initiative. Talent does not choose its birthplace, color, or address." Below the quote was a list of names. The first 200 scholarship recipients. Amara's name was at the top, but what caught her attention was the bottom of the plaque. A smaller inscription in memory of Loretta Hayes, 1958 to 2022, teacher, mentor, warrior. When they try to silence you, sing 3 times louder. Amara's vision blurred. She pressed her fingers to her mouth, trying not to cry in the middle of this corporate lobby. Daniel put a hand on her shoulder, steady, grounding. Your grandmother would have hated all this corporate bullshit, he said quietly, but she would have loved what it means, what it does. Amara managed a nod. She'd probably also tell you to stop crying and get back to work. Daniel added a hint of humor in his voice. That got a laugh out of her. Watery, but real. They stood there for a few more minutes, looking at the names on the plaque. Each one represented a kid who wouldn't have to sleep on subway benches, who wouldn't have to choose between eating and buying guitar strings, who wouldn't have to prove their humanity before someone would help them. What happens to Voices of America? Amara asked eventually. Complete restructure, new production team, new guidelines, new oversight board that includes psychologists and child advocates. The show continues, but the entire format is different. No more manufactured drama. No more exploitation. We're calling it Voices Drop the Of America part. Seem too nationalist anyway. Will people watch it if it's not cruel? I guess we'll find out. Daniel shrugged. If they don't, fine. I'd rather have a failed show than a successful one built on hurting people. Over the next 6 months, the Loretta Hayes initiative grew beyond what any of them had imagined. News outlets covered it extensively. Musicians donated instruments and time. A famous producer volunteered to run masterclasses. Foundations that had never funded arts education suddenly wanted to contribute. More importantly, kids started showing up. Kids with talent that had been buried under poverty and neglect and systemic barriers. Kids who could sing, play, compose, produce, who just needed someone to give them a chance without making them beg for it. Amara enrolled at the New York Academy of Music. She moved into an apartment in Brooklyn that Daniel and his wife had found for her 2-bedroom safe neighborhood near a subway stop. The first night she slept there in a real bed with clean sheets and a door that locked. She cried for 2 hours. She kept her old guitar though, hung it on the wall of her bedroom, duct tape and all. A reminder, a trophy, proof that she'd survived. She started writing an album, called it Stations, named after the subway stops where she'd performed. Times Square, Union Square, 14th Street, Washington Square. Each song told a story about cold, about hunger, about invisibility, about the particular kind of strength it takes to keep singing when nobody's listening. Some nights she still went down to the subway, not to perform for money she didn't need to anymore, but to play for the people who did need it, the ones who looked like she used to look. She'd set up her guitar, open the case, and play for an hour. When people dropped money in the case, she'd leave it there. At the end of the night, she'd give it all to whoever was still there, sleeping on benches trying to survive another night. Pay it forward, her grandmother used to say. The show Voices premiered its redesigned format in September. No more surprise eliminations. No more harsh criticism designed to break people. No more exploitation of trauma. Instead, the show focused on artistry, on growth, on genuine mentorship. Contestants got paid stipends. They had access to counselors. They could leave at any time without penalty. The ratings weren't as high as they'd been during the Philip Grayson era, but they were steady, respectable, and more importantly, the show stopped being a national shame and became something people could watch without feeling complicit in cruelty. Daniel made sure that every episode ended with information about the Loretta Hayes initiative, how to apply, how to donate, how to help. Applications continued to pour in. By December, they'd funded 500 students. By the following summer, 1,000. And every single one of them knew Amara's story. Knew that the program existed because one girl refused to accept humiliation as the price of opportunity. Some of them wrote to her. Letters, emails, messages on social media. Thank you for not giving up. You saved my life. I'm going to make you proud. Amara read every single one. The Staples Center buzzed with the particular energy of Grammy night cameras everywhere, celebrities in designer gowns, industry executives in tailored suits, young artists trying to look like they belonged. The air smelled like expensive perfume and ambition. Amara Johnson, 21 years old, sat 3 rows from the stage. She wore a midnight blue dress that her stylist had picked out elegant but simple, nothing too flashy. On her lap rested her guitar case, not a new one. The same battered, duct-taped case from 4 years ago. She'd had it professionally restored. The wood had been cleaned, some of the deeper scratches repaired, but she'd insisted they leave the duct tape, leave the dents, leave the evidence of survival. Beside her sat Daniel Carter and his wife Rebecca. On her other side, a young woman from the Loretta Hayes initiative named Jasmine, who'd been invited as Amara's +1. Jasmine was 17 from Detroit, with a voice that could break your heart. Nervous? Daniel asked quietly. Terrified, Amara admitted. Good, you should be. Means you care. The ceremony moved through its early awards. Best Pop Vocal Album, Best R&B Performance. Each winner gave their speech, some tearful, some political, some just grateful. Then came the category Amara had been nominated for Best New Artist. Her competition was steep. A country singer who'd gone viral on TikTok. A rapper from Atlanta who'd released the album of the year. A pop star who'd been famous since she was a teenager but was only now eligible, and a classical pianist who'd overcome incredible odds to get here. Any of them could win. All of them deserved it. The presenter walked on stage, an older musician, someone legendary who Amara had grown up listening to. He opened the envelope with dramatic flair. And the Grammy for Best New Artist goes to… Time seemed to slow. Amara's heart pounded so hard she could hear it. Amara Johnson. The room exploded with applause. Amara sat frozen for a full 3 seconds, unable to process. Then Jasmine was pulling her to her feet, crying and laughing. Daniel hugged her hard. Rebecca kissed her cheek. She picked up the guitar case, couldn't leave it behind, and made her way to the stage on legs that felt disconnected from her body. The Grammy was heavier than she'd expected, solid, real. She held it in one hand and stepped up to the microphone. The applause continued for what felt like forever. She waited, breathing, trying to compose herself. Finally, the room quieted enough for her to speak. "Thank you. God, thank you so much." Her voice shook. She took a breath, steadying herself. 4 years ago, I stood on a stage and asked for a meal. Tonight I'm standing here holding this, and I still can't quite believe it's real. Gentle laughter rippled through the audience. Warm, supportive. This album Stations is named after the subway stops where I used to perform when I was homeless. Times Square, Union Square, 14th Street, Washington Square. Those places were brutal, cold, sometimes dangerous, but they taught me more about music than any classroom ever could. They taught me that if you want people to really hear you, you have to mean every single word you sing. You can't fake it, not on a subway platform at 2 in the morning when everyone just wants to get home. She held up the guitar case. This guitar has been with me through everything. It's cracked. It's been taped together more times than I can count. It's been dropped on concrete, soaked in rain, frozen in snow. But it kept playing. And it taught me something important. Our strength doesn't come from being perfect or having the best equipment. It comes from refusing to quit when everything tells us to. More applause. She waited for it to subside. I want to dedicate this to my grandmother, Loretta Hayes, who taught me that music is a weapon. Not to hurt people, but to fight against anyone who tries to make you smaller than you are. She told me that when they try to silence you, you sing 3 times louder, and she was right. Her voice broke a little. She paused, composing herself. I also want to thank Daniel Carter, who remembered what it felt like to need help and chose to give it. Not just to me, but to thousands of kids through the Loretta Hayes Initiative. Because he understood that one person can change a system if they're willing to use their power for something besides themselves. She looked out at the audience, at all those famous faces. If you have power, any power, even a little, use it to build bridges for other people, not walls. Don't hoard opportunities. Don't gatekeep. Don't make people prove they deserve basic dignity. Just help. That's it. Just help. The applause that followed was different, deeper. Not just celebration, but agreement. Amara stepped back from the microphone Grammy in one hand, guitar case in the other, and walked off stage. Backstage, the press room was chaos. Reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing, handlers trying to direct her to the right spot. But before all that, she saw someone standing by the exit, Madison Blake. She looked completely different from the girl Amara remembered from that night 4 years ago. Her blonde hair was shorter, pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore jeans and a plain sweater, no designer labels visible, no obvious wealth on display. She looked smaller somehow, less certain. She was holding an envelope. Amara's stomach tightened. Daniel, walking beside her, noticed immediately and moved closer, protective. Madison saw them approaching and froze. For a moment, she looked like she might turn and run. Then she took a visible breath and stepped forward. "Hi," she said quietly. "Hi," Amara replied, wary. Madison held out the envelope with a slightly shaking hand. "I wrote you a letter. I've been trying to work up the courage to send it for God for years, but tonight felt like maybe the right time, if that's okay." Amara took the envelope. It was thick, stuffed with what felt like multiple pages. "I'm not going to ask you to forgive me," Madison continued, quickly, words tumbling out. I don't deserve that, but I wanted you to know that I've thought about that night every single day since it happened. How I laughed, how I just went along with everything because it was easier than standing up, how her voice broke, how I treated you like you were there for my entertainment." She wiped her eyes roughly. "My parents made me watch the full broadcast. The whole thing, including all the backstage footage, made me sit there and see what I looked like giggling while you asked for food, making jokes about your clothes. And I realized I was exactly the kind of person I always said I'd never be." Amara said nothing, just listened. I left school after that, switched to a public university. I'm studying social work now. I volunteer at a youth shelter twice a week, have been for 3 years. I'm trying to, she trailed off. I don't know. I'm trying to be better, do better. I know that doesn't fix anything I did to you, but it's a start, Amara said. Madison looked up surprised. I'm not going to stand here and tell you everything's fine, Amara continued carefully. You did hurt me. You were part of a system that tried to break me for entertainment. But I also understand what it's like to be shaped by the people around you. To not question things because everyone acts like they're normal. She paused, choosing her words. You can't change what you did. None of us can change our past. But you can choose who you become next. And it sounds like you're trying to do that. Madison's face crumpled. Tears spilled over. Thank you, she whispered, for even talking to me. For not, she couldn't finish. Read the letter, Amara said, gesturing to the envelope. If you want to talk more after that, call me. My number's on the business card inside. Madison nodded, still crying. Okay, yes, thank you. She turned to leave, then stopped and looked back. For what it's worth, that performance, the one where they cut your mic and you sang anyway, it changed my life. It was the first time I saw what actual courage looks like. Not the fake kind we see in movies, the real kind. She left before Amara could respond. Daniel let out a low breath. That took guts. For both of you. Yeah, Amara said quietly. It did. Later that night, back in her apartment, a real apartment now, with furniture and plants and framed photos on the walls, Amara sat on her couch and opened Madison's letter. It was 7 pages long, handwritten in neat, careful script. No crossed out words. She'd written it carefully, deliberately. Madison described watching the footage over and over in the weeks after it aired, described the shame of seeing herself laugh while Amara stood alone, the horror of realizing how casual her cruelty had been, how unthinking. She wrote about her father losing his job after the scandal, turns out publicly telling your daughter that poor people exist to make her look better isn't great for a corporate lawyer's reputation, about her parents' divorce, about her family's reckoning with their own privilege and prejudice. She wrote about deciding to leave her expensive private college and transfer to a state school, about getting a job at the youth shelter, about meeting kids who reminded her of Amara, talented, struggling, overlooked, about learning that most people aren't fundamentally bad, they're just thoughtless, and thoughtlessness unchecked creates its own kind of evil. At the end, she wrote, I can't undo what I did. I can't take back the laugh or the dismissal or the way I treated you like you were beneath me, but I can spend the rest of my life making sure I never look at another human being the way I looked at you that night. I'm sorry. I'll always be sorry, and I hope someday you can believe that. Madison Amara folded the letter carefully and set it on the coffee table. The next morning, she called the number Madison had left at the bottom of the last page. Madison answered on the first ring. Hello? Hey, it's Amara. Silence. Then, oh my God, hi. I didn't think I mean thank you for, are you free next Saturday? Amara interrupted gently. Yes. There's a group of kids from the Loretta Hayes Initiative performing at a community center in Brooklyn. I'm helping run a workshop beforehand, teaching them some techniques, talking about stage presence. I thought, she paused, maybe you'd want to come, help out. The silence on the other end stretched so long, Amara wondered if the call had dropped. Then quietly, really? But fair warning, these kids are brutal critics. They'll call you out if you're not genuine. Madison laughed. It sounded like relief and disbelief mixed together. I'd love that. Thank you. Seriously, thank you. Don't thank me yet. Just show up ready to work. I will. I promise. The following Saturday, Amara and Madison stood in a room full of teenagers from neighborhoods like the one Amara had grown up in. Kids with secondhand instruments and voices full of raw talent. Kids who knew what it felt like to be overlooked, dismissed, told they didn't matter. They spent 4 hours working with them, teaching harmonies, talking about breath control, sharing stories about performance anxiety and imposter syndrome, and how to keep going when everything tells you to quit. At one point, Madison pulled Amara aside during a break. I don't know how to be around you, she admitted quietly. I keep feeling like I'm going to say the wrong thing or step over some line I don't see. Then say the wrong thing, Amara replied. We'll figure it out. That's how it works. It wasn't easy. There were awkward moments, conversations that hit old wounds, times when Madison would say something thoughtless, remnants of her old worldview, and have to be gently corrected. But slowly, carefully, they built something. Not quite friendship. Not yet. But a bridge. A tentative connection based on honesty and the shared belief that people could change. That past harm didn't have to define future possibility. 3 months later, Amara was invited to speak at the network's annual gala, a massive fundraiser for the Loretta Hayes Initiative. She stood at a podium in a ballroom full of executives, producers, artists, and donors. 4 years ago, she began, I asked for a meal in exchange for a song. Tonight, I'm asking for something bigger. She looked out at the sea of faces, some genuinely interested, some there, because they had to be all of them with power she once couldn't have imagined accessing. Don't underestimate people because of where they sleep, or what they wear, or the color of their skin, or how much money they have. Because here's the truth nobody wants to admit. Talent doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't wait for approval. It doesn't care about your zip code or your bank balance or whether you went to the right schools. It just is. She paused, letting that sink in. And if you're not looking for it in every corner, every subway station, every shelter, every street, every place polite society pretends doesn't exist, then you're missing the most extraordinary voices in the world. You're letting brilliance die because you couldn't be bothered to look past your own assumptions. Some people shifted uncomfortably. Good. My grandmother used to say that trying to make someone else small so you feel bigger only makes you smaller. She was right. The people who tried to humiliate me 4 years ago, most of you probably don't even remember their names. But the kids in the Loretta Hayes Initiative, they're just getting started, and they're going to change everything. Not because someone gave them permission, but because they're too talented to ignore. The applause was immediate and genuine. After the speech, Daniel found her in the hallway. You know what your grandmother would say right now, he asked. What? That's my girl. Now go do it again tomorrow. She never let people rest on their accomplishments. Amara smiled. No, she didn't. That night she went home, picked up her old guitar, the one that had survived everything, and started writing a new song. Not about pain this time. Not about survival or struggle or the brutality of indifference. About hope. About bridges. About the fact that the world keeps trying to build boxes too small for extraordinary people, and how those people keep breaking out anyway. She played until her fingers ached and her voice went rough. The music filled her small apartment, spilled out. The windows floated down to the street below, where someone else might be struggling, might be cold, might be wondering if tomorrow was worth fighting for. And somewhere in whatever place exists beyond this one, Loretta Hayes listened and smiled. And whispered into the spaces between notes, that's my girl. Now sing it louder.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.